Let's proceed to the last paper of the panel and of the conference before Agnes Horvath, then with disease in politics. Go on, Agnes, thank you.
Yeah. So to find the missing link between politics, disease, and liminality. So just about politics. Politics is of two kinds, benign and totalitarian. While both govern in the name of the people, only in benign politics things are safe, keeping and saving the memory of its principles in people's head in a delicious and knowledgeable manner. Why totalitarian politics is decontextualized. It is absent of memory and uncertain about principles. It's seeing its people as cheap and gimmick in existence. So gullible, easily persuaded for giving face value for things destructive, deliberately poisoning its people for the well-being of the poisoned, and using the nonsensical or propagating the nonsensical for the senses of understanding. This is how might begin every political textbook on politics since fascism and communism, who invented race purification and moral purification, and continuing with contemporary democracies that invented biopurification of the population in order to raise delirious affluences, which could be relieved in political action. If I can use Roger Griffin's expression, relieved in political action. So the delirious affluences is my topic now that I would like to explore by 2 points. The first one, that totalitarianism did not occur by governmental action or political change or behind the door global conspiracies. No, technology carried the trick. But on technology, one must not expect something dramatically central idea. But the whole and all of its pieces are overwhelmed by the feeling of destruction, the desire for annihilation. This is why, from one moment to another, the tide of totalitarianism started to run into one direction of fusing humans between each other and with others. And then it's coming the examples of the molecular electronics and the DNA modification and biotechnology. And the tide of totalitarianism again is alive on us with its orgy of imbecility, which does not have any understanding what gets done modificating the matter. The matter is a kind of very delicate thing. It has its own garment. It has its own adoring coat. It has its own form. It has its own enrobe, which is not possible to modificate without any price on that, if we modify it, if the biotechnology modifies it. It is a kind of process with centrifugate everything into one mind and one body mass, which could be easily controlled by a central tower. It's again the idea of Foucault of panopticon after after Bentham. So this modification of the matter has its own price. First price, a larval, a kind of worm-like existence, which is just a parasite. A parasite is a byproduct. It's I don't want to continue this academic discourse, parasitizing, comparasitizing, Serres parasite, because it's just a byproduct which has its own consequences of an erratic system building. So the parasite is the byproduct of technology, which is decontextualizing everything which is around of it. And right now, this direction is overwhelmed and multiplicating and amplifying. And this leaves better a kind of desperate position, deprived from its own dignity. Adore, enrobe, the garment, deprived of its isolation, deprived from its mental and physical limitations, and also the personal disfigurement. It's a personal disfigurement, defacement of the matter, robbing away its own form and taking its form. The virus and the disease is a kind of existence. It exists. It has an RNA. The virus has an RNA, not a DNA, but an RNA, which would like to eat up our form. It has its own eagerness to feel and multiplicate and reproduce itself in the human body. So why the whole thing is so important, considering affluences? Affluences are the only forces in nature which can change matter by entering and leaving it. Affluences are causing electricity, heat and light, kinetic energy, nervous stimuli. In its compressed form, it is magnetism, and in its when it is spinning up, it's gravity. But all in all, the vibration of these affluences, if they are impressed and conduct and gets a conducting spaces, it can flourishing, it can amplificating, it can multiplicating, and can show various manifestations of the matter, like light and heat and electricity. But not until the 19th century, it was a kind of systematic methodological, it was under a kind of systematic methodological investigation. Only in the 19th century, when the electric current and the magnetism, it was recognized the interaction between electric current and the magnetism started the natural science, a kind of interest and methodological work on the electromagnetic radiation, EMR. Determination was made in this way, supported by many eminent observations already in the antiquity, by Empedocles, for instance, who died in 430. He was a pre-Socratic philosopher, and also Plato in the Meno. He described these tiny particles that every materons and secrets in these effluences, this electric fluid, this film, in the state of high intensity, like love and like death. And And what is more important and more interesting, not only how the influences leave the body in a state of love and death, but how they commensurate with perception. So with perception, with hearing, with smelling, they have a commensurate, so make it easier to understand. So the electric fluid, the effluences, which a kind of incommensurable fluidity, fluxity, commensurate with the matter in poruses, in a kind of interaction between the incommensurable and the commensurable. And the result is energy. Then the whole idea was picked up by the Neoplatonists in their divinization practices. They wanted to access to this spiritual power because it was called as a spiritual power, and it was in fact a spiritual power. And somebody talked about this, that I think John, that the epidemics are spiritual. It's a spiritual power. And when the society is punished by the COVID, and how, that was János' expression, it is a spiritual, a kind of occult spirituality behind of that. So the Neoplatonists picked up the idea, and then it became the, maybe before even, not at this time, the target of magia and alchemy. So the effluences are quite a peculiar phenomenon of nature, which for 1,000 years it was also banned and illegitimate to use because of its multiplication effect, partly, and partly because it changes one species to another. So the population, in the Middle Ages and before in the Antiquity, were quite conscious about what these effluences are, what this spiritual power are, but not us moderns. So by the activity of the social scientists, or let's say alchemists at that time, Newton and Boyle and many others, because at the 17th century, every experimentist was an alchemist, it became a scientific discipline. They started to talk about the method of fluxion, and I'm talking about Newton, which penetrates every matter and which cause electricity, heat, nervous stimuli, and gravity. Since then, we know that the world around of us is bioelectric nature, the world around of us. Our heartbeat or breathing is bioelectric, and the disease, the virus, is is included. The viruses were born on bioelectricity, they spread on bioelectricity, and they are themselves waveforms with a small manifestations of matter. They are spiritual themselves. Just a final word, and then maybe on the discussion I can talk about more, that when politics discovered or started to use delirious effluences, the extraction of delirium, something highly desirable. At that moment, we became trapped into a vicious circle that as much waste is produced around of us by technological means, because this decontextualization of matter, what technology is using through the extraction of delirious effluences, are new pathways for new compounds, which are hybrid, which are decontextualized, which are corrupted, which are destroyed. So as much destroyed waste around of us, as much we are enslaved to technology, because technology by essence, the only one who can decontextualize the waste itself with a new waste. So placing heaps of rubbish, layer after layer, on top of each other. Thank you, that's it.
Okay, thank you, Agnes. Yes, thank you, Agnes. We have two discussants, Björn Thomason and Harald Vidra. Whoever wants to go first.
I have one simple question. Well, it's not simple, but it's a very contextual question from the short paper, which is very condensed and it's very clear in a way. But there is one thing I didn't understand, and that is at the very end, the 3 lines from below, Agnes, when you say technology cannot produce anything else than what is its essence, disintegrated waste by spiritual means, placing heaps of rubbish layer after layer on the top of each other. So I didn't fully understand the relationship between disintegrated waste by spiritual means. If you just could clarify that later. But the main thing, I mean, 2 main things. One is, I think to explicate better the relationship of effluence on the one hand as a, let's say, the bodily or the physical change of matter. And then the second thing, as it is used by agents, let's say, as it is used by politicians, governments, those who work with it in order to achieve a certain aim. So I think because there are probably at least these 2 levels, right? This change of the matter, which is a kind of like it's a physical biological process, as you outlined, right? Kinetic energy. But then it is, of course, the one that is sort of like transmitted or transferred into the social world. I think that was something that is sort of like hovering sort of like over the paper, but it is, I mean, it cannot be made explicit in the short paper, which is only 2 pages. But the second thing is something that comes from that and is in a way more general. And we just talked about it when we talked about how Girard or Serres can be sort of like, even they got infected by this virus of probably going to hope too much in the wrong direction. And that brings me to Serres again. When Serres died, I was in France and I got the paper, you know, Libération, and read about Serres. And there were 2 testimonies of people, one of them who had seen him 2 days before his death. And he had said, he opened the door apparently, and he said, "Nous sommes tous foutus," which means we are all screwed. And what he meant was the ecological situation, so to speak. And apparently for an hour and so on, we just rant on about that. And that was the last time this person saw it. I don't know who that person was. But in a way, so there seems to be a kind of, you know, you could say old man, 88 years, as sort of like becoming perhaps too pessimistic. It was not about his own coming death, but it was about the situation of the world. But I wanted to bring that into this kind of, the question about technology, you know. And Serres, as we said, you know, he had hopes of Wikipedia kind of trying perhaps to turn it around. There is always hope. And this seems to be what drives technology as well. Orwell said in one of his famous essays, you know, the radio and the airplanes were invented to bring us together. And what they've done, they drew us apart. They drove us apart. I mean, he was writing in 1945, you know, already seeing that this world would become sort of like these 2 different blocks. And you can use it for any kind of technology. Any kind of technology is presented to us, and that is probably the alchemy behind it, as a hope. And there is hardly anything that you cannot argue with that, you know, is negative, but has, of course, these positive aspects. But the problem is, of course, it's gone out of our hands. You know, this quote from Weber sticks really in my head. You know, the primitive knows much more about the tools because they are of a human size. They are close, they're contextualized. We know hardly anything about this technology we're using and we are surrounded by, but it makes a more comfortable life. It makes a sort of like a, I wouldn't say a better life, but definitely a more comfortable life. And that's the problem. I mean, this is something that Agnes, and I end on this. The alchemy, yes, it is corrupting, it is manipulating, but I think this is part of our nature. You know, Girard would say, you know, we are always incomplete, therefore we desire always other things, and the desire is endless. And the technology is one aspect that captures this desire. So, I mean, okay, I leave it there because I recognize that it can turn into a spiral, you know. We're trying to get our, you know, where can we get the hope in the end, you know, for something. And Roger pointed out, you know, yeah, there was many hopes, always for new beginnings, and they already are the traps. You know, we walk into the next pitfall because we think we can create new beginnings. Anyhow, that was it. As much as it's worth for a comment. Thank you very much, Agnes.
We can't hear you, Agnes. You have to unmute yourself.
Again, the same problem, that I didn't want to let the cat out of the bag with my presentation. What I wanted to say, that was your first question, that the delirious effluences are conducting new pathways for new compounds continuously, which are a kind of corrupted and hybrid compounds, if there is a kind of interruption. And the technology is a kind of interruption which is transforming the matrixing linear transformation, which is based on effluences and which is functioning by effluences, into a corrupted kind of erotic matrix, an erotic matrix which has nothing to do with the linear transformation, but cyclic, and turning around and around continuously. And this is what I implied by our catch-22 or vicious circle, that we got by technology, we got into this circle, which is always reproducing itself, and there is no escape from that. But not to be so negative, I would like to say that there is an escape, and you already hinted about the escape, if we are keeping the respect towards the form and towards the garment what we have. And this is the charis, and this is the joyful and beautiful attribute of being. And again, if Roger allows me, I don't know whether he's here between the audience, I would like to refer to his book, because he wrote about in Fascism and Modernity that at the moment when the people, and that he was talking about the First World War, at the moment that the people lost the nomos, which I would like to translate to logos, and to charis, because charis is the one which gives the measure for the things. Not that they became lost, but they became the subject, the easy subject of transcendentality, a low transcendentality, a kind of spiritual transformation which brought them down to neglecting themselves, to neglecting their own duty to keep the charis, keep the beauty in themselves. I don't know whether it's an answer for your question.
We have, yeah, Harald, if you want to add something. If not, we have, no? Yeah, we have one last comment by Arpad.
Thank you very much. Well, I just want to add, because to what Agnes was saying, that I'm trying since a long time to actually get what exactly is the scope of Agnes's point. And if I can help it in this way, I would say that Agnes probably has a much more radical critique of technology than Heidegger had. So if I understand Agnes right, and we have to understand this, that technology indeed is evil, and modern science is evil-like, and we have to understand this. That we have to go back to Nietzsche and the Pud and the Origo. Now, Nietzsche wrote a little bit about modern science, and the Pud and the Origo of modern science, which Francis Yates was trying to trace a little bit in her studies of alchemy and the Hermetic tradition and Giordano Bruno and so on, and Vogelin a little bit with Gnosticism tried to do that tradition, is that indeed this entire undertaking of modern technologized science goes back to a radical break with the Plato-Aristotelian worldview and the Christian worldview in the 16th, 17th century, and their conflation, and it was the work of alchemists. And so we have no hope at all whatsoever in modern technologized science. That is mine, and we have to understand this. At least I try to understand. This is what Agnes is saying with affluence and all these kind of things. So no hope in science and technology, but there is hope elsewhere. We have to go back to nature, and Karis Logos, I return to that, but in my interpretation, this is what Agnes is saying. And if somebody says that, well, you cannot really say that, and technology has all kinds of good things. No, it doesn't. It has good things in its own way to what it already destroyed, and it will destroy it further. And unless we understand that technology is evil, we have no way out of that. And there are many people, again, Serres went a long way about that, and it's very important that the parasite finishes on evil. And we can interpret Serres and continue Serres, Vogelin, Girard, but Heidegger, but Borkenau, Foucault, all are about that point. And I think this is what Agnes tries to tell us, that we have to face up. And of course, our politicians won't face it up, our scientists, our academia won't face it up. But sorry guys, technology is evil. This is how I understood Agnes, and maybe she will correct me. But you have to turn off the micro, sorry.
Microphone, Agnes.
I agree. But I agree, but I had also a problem with Paul's presentation, Paul O'Connor, when he showed these pictures of the cone, the druids. Where is Paul? Where is... Okay, with the cone druids, because they were part of the magic people who are paralleled right now to the experts. So I should not make any distinction between them. They had the same role in the Irish society before than the scientists at the moment. It's just decontextualizing and taking the spiritual fluid from their subject. And this spiritual fluid and using the spiritual fluid, it's a troglodyte existence, which much before modernity existed in the society, but was hidden. So this is what I wanted to say, that it was banned, it was pushed on the border of society and was never allowed into society, not even to politics and not even the science. Right now we have no physics anymore because it became a chemics. Chemia became the new discipline which changed physics. Physics, according to Aristotle, in physics, matter is not changeable. Matter atomos, atom means that you cannot divide it, like the individuum. You cannot divide the individuum by definition. Right now, Rutherford, for instance, he received his Nobel Prize. He was the one who distracted first the atom. So he received his the Nobel Prize from chemics. The chemics which makes compounds. And at that moment, when physics turned into chemics, the independent existence of entities cease to exist. They are just compounds. And this is the logic of technology. They would like to make a compound from all of us, a kind of characterless massa of sensuality. See, Paul.
It's a fascinating discussion and a really interesting paper, Agnes. I think it's such a tricky area that's caution. I sort of feel that caution is needed. And if we are going to sort of say that modern science and modern technology is evil, this is a very strong statement, and so we have to be clear what we mean by evil. Now, there, I think Serres' work, just because we're on this theme, Serres' work on parasitism does become interesting and relevant. I think, particularly, I didn't discuss the aspect that Bjorn mentioned, where Serres also does define the parasite as a thermal exciter. So the thermal excitation, the parasite heats things up, warms things up. So even the mosquito, when it's on your skin, generates a little bit of heat in order to get your blood out, so making things fluid, making things a little bit more fluid, but in order to steal your blood, right? Now, it clearly transformation, this effluent phase in which something becomes fluid is crucial to then it acquiring form. So the liminal moment, and then the moment in which things cohere into a form. Effluence and fluidity is absolutely crucial to the production of form. But often what happens is the effluence that can go towards the production of a form is stolen. And so those who are not interested in contributing to, if you like, the creation of the form, make off with the effluence. So those of us who are invested in creating the form consider that a problem. So evil is from the perspective of we who are trying to engage in the concrescence of this form out of its fluidity. So the process of crystallization always involves a double act between a fluid moment and a moment at which the crystal solidifies. And life always involves that kind of juxtaposition between a fluid moment and a crystallization, a concrescence. So we who are interested in the becoming of what is concressing as a form consider stuff that is stealing our fluidity from us to be evil. So the parasite is evil insofar as it is not contributing to the form. On the contrary, it is taking the fluidity that is needed for the form. But of course, the question is, to what form are we contributing? To what concrescence are our activities oriented? And what agreement do we have with respect to the form that we're attempting to concress? Now, that's the way that I would sort of, I don't know, just offer a way of sort of opening it into a productive relation with Serres' work, potentially.
Agnes, your microphone, and on that note, we'll probably should wrap up the panel. Thank you.
Okay, good. I just wanted to say, yes, it's a very good interpretation. Exactly, this is the one that we need effluences. Effluences are essential, and this is what I hinted about the matrix and the matrixing process, which is our life, and everything is matrixing around of us. But at the moment when the matrix is interrupted and a merchant mind started to profiting from the matrix process, it turns into the vicious circle. And we turn it, we humans, who would like to profiting from the process and profiting from the production and profiting from the multiplication and the modification of the matter. It was not until the 70s, the end of the 70s, that the biotechnology farms established. It was a recent story. All of the biomodification history the Cetus, for instance, in America, that was the first one who started to deal with the DNA modifications. It was at the 78 or 79. And then it has grown into a huge industry, which is the result at now with the COVID and all of that. They are just experimenting us, and they are just making money from our suffering, and just using our body as a kind of parasite, whose secrets the delirium, the delirious affluences from us to make their ongoing business. And this is the post-humanity. But thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Very good for the clarification. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you very much to everybody, to all the speakers and the discussants. Again.